Chapter 3. Anne, praying in the temple, has her prayer granted, her wish fulfilled. August 23rd, 1944. Before sharing the following, I wish to make a note. The house I saw and described did not seem to me to be the well-known one of Nazareth. The location, at least, is quite different. Also, the orchard garden is larger, and beyond it fields can be seen. Not many, but they're there. Later, when Mary is married, there's only an orchard. Large, but not more than an orchard. And I have never seen again in other visions the rooms that I saw before. I do not know whether, for financial reasons, Mary's parents disposed of part of their property, or whether Mary, when she left the temple, moved into another house, given to her perhaps by Joseph. I do not remember whether in past visions and instructions I had a clear sign that the house of Nazareth was the house where she was born. My head is very heavy with fatigue, and then particularly with dictations. I forget the words at once, although the commands remain recorded in my mind and illuminate my soul. But details fade away immediately. If after just 1 hour I had to repeat what I heard, with the exception of 1 or 2 main sentences, I don't know what I would remember. Visions, on the contrary, remain clear in my mind because I had to watch them for myself. I hear dictations, but I see visions. Therefore, visions remain clear in my mind, which had to work and process as I followed them through their various phases. I was hoping there would be a declaration on yesterday's vision. Instead, nothing. But now, I am beginning to see, and I write. Outside the walls of Jerusalem, on the hills and among the olive trees, there is a large crowd. It looks like a large market, but there are no booths. There are no shouting charlatans or peddlers, no games. There are coarse woolen tents, certainly waterproof and strong against the wind, hanging on posts fixed to the ground. And tied to the posts, there are green branches, providing both ornamental decoration and practical coolness. Other tents, huts instead, are made entirely of branches fixed to the ground and tied in a ridge fashion, thus forming small green tunnels. Under each tent there are people of every age and condition, speaking quietly and earnestly, with the cry of a child breaking the quietness now and again. It is nightfall, and the lights of small oil lamps are glittering here and there throughout this odd camp. Around the lights, some families are taking their supper on the ground, the mothers holding the little ones in their laps. Many of these tired infants fall asleep holding pieces of bread in their tiny pink fingers, while their small heads fall on their mothers' breasts, like little chicks under the wings of hens. The mothers finish their meals, as best they can, each with only one hand free, while the other hand is holding a child against their heart. Meanwhile, other families are not yet supping and are talking in the dimness of twilight, waiting for the food to be ready to be eaten. Small fires are lit here and there, and women are busy around them. Slow, somewhat plaintive lullabies soothe children who are having trouble going to sleep. High above is a beautiful clear sky, which is becoming a deeper and deeper blue, until it looks like an enormous, soft, dark blue velvet curtain. On this cloth, a few at a time, invisible craftsmen and decorators fix gems and night lights, some isolated, some in odd geometrical patterns, amongst which stand out the big bear and the little bear in the shape of a cart, with its shaft resting on the ground after the oxen have been freed from the yoke. The North Star is smiling in all of its brightness. I realize that it's October, because a loud voice of a man says so. This month of October is beautiful, more so than in any past years. And here is Anne, coming from a fire with something in her hands, a cloth spread over a loaf of bread which is large and flat like a cake, and serves also as a tray. Little Alphaeus is holding onto her skirt and is prattling in his little voice. Joachim, when he sees Anne approaching, hastens to light his lamp. He is at the entrance of his little hut made of branches, and is speaking to a man about 30 years old, whom Alphaeus greets from a distance in his shrill voice, saying, "Daddy!" Anne, in her stately walk, passes along the row of huts. She is stately, yet humble. She is not haughty with anyone. She picks up the child of a very poor woman, as the toddler had fallen at her feet while running around like a little scamp. Since he has dirtied his face and is crying, Anne cleans him, comforts him, and hands him to his mother, who has run towards them and is apologizing. Anne says to her, "Oh, it's nothing. I'm glad he didn't hurt himself. He's a lovely child. How old is he?" 3 years. He's my second youngest, and I'm expecting another one shortly. I have 6 boys. Now, I would like to have a girl. A girl means a lot to her mother. "The Most High has consoled you very much, woman," sighs Anne. And the woman goes on, "Yes, I am poor, but the children are our joy, and the bigger ones already help with the work. And madam," it is very obvious that Anne is of a higher social standing, and the woman realizes it, "how many children have you got?" "None." "None? Isn't this one yours?" "No, he's the son of a very good neighbor. He is my consolation." "Did yours die, or—" "I never had any." "Oh." The woman looks at her pitifully. Anne says goodbye to her, sighing very heavily, and goes to her hut. "I have kept you waiting, Joachim. I was held up by a poor woman, the mother of 6 boys. Fancy that! And she is expecting another child shortly." Joachim sighs. Alphaeus's father calls him, but he answers, "I'm staying with Anne. I'll help her." Everybody laughs. "Please let him. He doesn't disturb us. He's not bound by the law yet. Here or there he's but a little bird eating," states Anne. And she sits down with the child in her lap and gives him some cake, and I think some roasted fish. I can see that she does something before giving it to him. Perhaps she removes a fish bone. She has served her husband first. She herself eats last. The night is more and more crowded with stars, and the camp with lights. Then little by little, many lights go out, the lamps of those who were the first to have supper and who now go to sleep. Also, the hum of conversation slowly decreases. No more children's voices are heard. Only some babies still unweaned raise their lamb-like little voices, seeking their mother's milk. The night blows her breath over places and people, obscuring pains and memories, hopes and ill feelings. Or perhaps not. Perhaps these last 2 survive in dreams, although alleviated by sleep. Anne says as much to her husband while lulling Alphaeus, who is falling asleep in her arms. "Last night I dreamed that next year I will be coming to the holy city for 2 feasts instead of 1 only, and one will be the offering of my own baby to the temple. Oh, Joachim!" "Do hope, Anne. Hope in the Lord. Did you perceive anything else? Did the Lord whisper anything to your heart?" "No, nothing. Only the dream. Tomorrow is the last day of prayer. All of the offerings have already been made, but we will renew them again tomorrow, solemnly. We shall gain our favor from God by our faithful love. I always think that it will happen for you, as it did for Anne of Elkanah. May God grant it. I wish I had someone say to me now, 'Go in peace. The God of Israel has granted you the grace that you asked for.'" If this grace comes, your child will tell you, turning over for the first time in your womb, and it will be the voice of an innocent, therefore the voice of God. The camp is now silent in darkness. Anne carries Alphaeus to the adjoining hut and places him on the bed near his little brothers, who are already asleep. Then she lies down beside Joachim, and their lamp also goes out, one of the little stars on earth. More beautiful, the stars in the vault of heaven remain watching over mankind wrapped in a deep sleep. Jesus says, "The just are always wise, because as friends of God, they live in his company and are taught by him, yes, by he who is infinite wisdom." My grandparents were just, and therefore they possessed wisdom. They could quote accurately from the book, singing the praises of wisdom from its context. She it was I loved and searched for from my youth. I resolved to have her as my bride. Anne of Aaron was the strong woman of which our ancestor speaks. And Joachim, a descendant of King David, had not sought charm and wealth so much as virtue. Anne possessed a great virtue. All holy attributes joined together like a sweet-smelling bunch of flowers to become one beautiful thing in her heart, and that was her own exceptional virtue, a real virtue worthy of being set before the throne of God. Joachim had therefore married wisdom twice, loving her more than any other woman, the wisdom of God enshrined in the heart of a just woman. Anne of Aaron had not sought anything else but to join her life to that of an upright man, certain that family joy lies in righteousness. And to be the full embodiment of the strong woman, she lacked only the crown of children, the glory of the married woman, the fruit of marriage, the justification of which Solomon speaks. As for her happiness, she lacked only children, the flowers of a tree that has become one thing with the adjoining tree, and obtains thereof abundance of new fruit, in which the two good qualities blend into one, because she had never experienced any disappointment on account of her husband. Although she was now approaching an old age, and had been Joachim's wife for many years, she was always for him the spouse of his youth, his joy, the most dear hind, the graceful fawn, whose caresses always had the fresh charm of the first nuptial evening, and sweetly fascinated his love, keeping it as fresh as a flower sprinkled with dew, and as ardent as a fire guarded, fed, and kept continuously burning. Therefore, in their affliction, in their childless state, they spoke to each other words of consolation in their thoughts and troubles. And eternal wisdom, when the time came, besides teaching them in waking consciousness, enlightened them with dreams at night, visions of the poem of glory that was to come from them, and was Most Holy Mary, my mother. If their humility made them hesitant, their hearts trembled in hope at the first hint of God's promise. There was already certainty in Joachim's words. Do hope. We shall gain our favor from God by our faithful love. They were dreaming of a child. They received the Mother of God. The words of the Book of Wisdom appear to be written for them. By means of her, I shall acquire glory before the people. By means of her, immortality shall be mine, and I shall leave an everlasting memory to my successors. But to obtain all of this, they had to become masters of a true and lasting virtue, unblemished and unmarred, preserved and strengthened through all events. Virtue of faith, virtue of hope, virtue of charity, virtue of chastity. The chastity of a married couple, They possessed it, because it is not necessary to be virgins to be chaste. And chaste nuptial beds are guarded by angels, and from them descend good children, who make the virtue of their parents the rule of their lives. But where are they now? Now children are not wanted, and neither is chastity. I therefore say that love and marriage are desecrated.